Well, the leader of majority in the National Assembly, Kimani Ichung'wah, is a man who has lately reduced his media appearance, choosing to express his thoughts through submissions in Parliament and on political podiums. However, on NTV, towards the end of 2025, we have had the honor of sitting with the leader of majority, Kimani Ichung'wah, also member of Parliament, Kikuyu constituency. Thank you very much, Mhesh, for hosting us here in Kikuyu.
Asante na karibu Kikuyu.
Asante sana. When people travel for...
Mikambura mayaihe.
That word is always very difficult for me.
That's why I see people opting to use Kikuyu. But welcome and Merry Christmas to you and all your viewers.
Asante sana. When all through these seasons people travel, it's a Kenyan culture to the village. Your village is 5 minutes or 10 minutes from town. How does it... What is your usual Christmas festivity of December looking like?
Well, as you said, in fact, my daughter once asked me, Daddy, why don't we have another shags? I said, because this is our shags. She said, but it's the same Kikuyu we go to every weekend. So, but it's also a blessing in disguise because we are very close to the city and we don't have to go through the rigors of getting stuck on the Nakuru highway or Thika Road or wherever, incurring a lot of expenses to be able to travel. And we spend our Christmas here since childhood. We've always spent Christmas at my father's place, just across. And this year was no exception, even without him, unfortunately. It's the first Christmas that we had to spend without him. But we've grown that way. From my 70-year-old brother to myself, who is a second last born and last son, we've all had our Christmas at home. And we like it that way and we want to keep it that way. It's a tradition that we've had over the years and we'll keep it that way even with our children. If you travel before Christmas, if you have to travel, you travel before Christmas. For instance, I took a few days and went with my family and I was back on the 23rd, I think.
You've mentioned the loss of your dad, and that's a sad moment that happened in 2025. What has your 2025 been like?
Well, mixed fortunes, I have to say. Highs and lows. I don't know what outweighs the other, but of course the lows tend always to outweigh the highs. And but all in all, we thank God for the resilience that He has given us to be able to go through that otherwise difficult year. Individually, it was a difficult year. As I said, I lost my father this year, a man I grew to know for the last 49 years of my life. A very strong pillar in my life and our family. And it wasn't an easy time for me and for the family, so it's been a rough one. Then with that came the loss of the former Prime Minister, the unfortunate incidents around June, July of the demonstrations, wanton destruction of property and loss of life. Therefore, it's a year I'd want to see behind us and pray to the Almighty God that the next year will be a happy and indeed a prosperous one, full of blessings, and we pray for the gift of life and good health. And also for the prosperity of all the people of our nation, and for peace and tranquility, that we will not have to see the kind of things that we saw in the year 2024, 2025. We ought not to lose a single life because of negative politics, because it's all politics that leads us to all this destruction. If you look at the events around June, July, if we left the young people to commemorate and remember those that lost their lives in 2024, without the political interference that came with the political players that came in to mobilize goons, we will not see the loss of life that we saw this year. The mobilization for destruction of property, especially in this region where we come from, was also very deliberate by political players who wanted to put the government in bad light with the people. But I thank God also, and that those will be some of the highs for me, that the people, especially the people of Mount Kenya, have now come to the realization that the road they were being taken was a treacherous one and a torturous one to them. And the politics of hatred and ethnicity and profiling an entire community that they wanted to profile the people of Mount Kenya and box us into a corner. The people of this region now have come to the realization that those who are taking them that direction are not taking them in the right direction, and therefore they have taken a step back now and started to make decisions that are in their best interest, not necessarily to blindly follow people who are not taking them anywhere.
You've got into the politics of the day, and this is how I want us to steer this particular discussion. We'll start with current affairs that Kenyans are concerned about, then get into some economy and the moves by the government, the road to Singapore. We will also look at politics towards the end of this discussion. But one of the current affairs, and I want to quote what you said on December 11th, 2024, that is 1 year ago, in an interview with KTN. You said, "I see the confidence that you have, and I share the confidence that we can transform this country, but it will not be possible to do it if people are working at cross purposes." This you are saying in relation to President William Ruto at that time visiting Uhuru Kenyatta at Ishaweri, and you actually stated that you candidly told the president he needed to reach out to former President Uhuru Kenyatta. 1 year down the line, we are at a situation where it appears we are at cross purposes. The same person, President Uhuru Kenyatta, getting barbs from your partners in the broad-based government, ODM. This is a journey you also walked before the election against President Uhuru Kenyatta. Let's start with your immediate thoughts about what is happening between ODM and President Kenyatta as a leader in the country.
Well, first I would give my unsolicited advice to former President Uhuru Kenyatta. When you have had the honor to serve as a president of a country, serve for 10 years and come to the end of your term and you retire, that elevates you to another level of a statesman and a father figure for the country. And his continuous endeavors to get involved in the day-to-day politics of the country reduces that stature that he ought to hold, because President Uhuru Kenyatta is our fourth president and the only surviving former president of this country is the father figure we should all be looking up to. We unfortunately lost another powerful father figure, the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, who had taken that stature of an African statesman, a Pan-Africanist, and a father figure not just in this country but in the region and in Africa. I wish and I pray that my brother Uhuru Kenyatta would come to that realization that he stands a better place when he takes that stature of a father figure, and ask him to heal. Unfortunately, when I look at President Uhuru Kenyatta, I see a man who is yet to heal from the loss of the 2022 elections. He made his fight with William Ruto too personal that he has never healed, that the deputy president he worked day and night to stop from being president became president through the support of the Almighty God and the people of Kenya. He is yet to heal from that. And it's true, I had a sitting with the president and we spoke and asked that he reaches out to the former president. First, because there was a lot of heavy lifting that this country needs to do in terms of being able to move this country, as the president has severally attested to, that he has had a sitting with the former prime minister, with the former president, just to get all hands on deck to move this country forward. Because many a times we lose opportunities to move the country forward because we are working at cross purposes. I'm sorry, but again, when I look at my good friend, former President Uhuru Kenyatta, he looks like the person who tends to overwork to bring others down so that he remains the greatest of all times.
You think so?
I believe so.
Okay.
And I would pray that he sees the country as bigger than himself and bigger than William Ruto. That the country is for us all and our children, including his own children. That when Kenya succeeds, it's not William Ruto who succeeds. It is Kenya that succeeds. It is all of us collectively that succeed. And therefore, the squabbles you see with them and ODM is because, as Junet Mohammed has said, President Uhuru Kenyatta probably still believes that his deep pockets, just like he believed in 2022, would alter the political decisions of Kenyans. And you heard Junet tell the world that he has offered to buy ODM for $1 billion shillings. This is a party built painstakingly for over 20 years. Uhuru Kenyatta has never ran and managed any political party. Fact of life. Look at TNA. I was a member of TNA, I was elected on his party. We never held a single party meeting as TNA. His deputy president, William Ruto, is the one who actually held meetings with us in Karen, convinced many doubting Thomases that it was possible to amalgamate TNA, URP then, and another 11 political parties into one bigger national movement called Jubilee. And we did that in 2017. Look at history again, what President Uhuru Kenyatta did with Jubilee. Just like he had done with KANU, a behemoth of a national movement. The independence party of our country, the CCM of Kenya, reduced it from a party that was a national movement to a party that had a handful of members of parliament. Same thing he has done with Jubilee. He doesn't want the rigors and the pain of working hard to build a political party. He wants to use his money to buy off. But things don't work that way.
When you hear Junet say President Uhuru Kenyatta wants to buy the party with 1 billion shillings, when you hear yesterday the governor of Homa Bay, chairperson of ODM, say tutapambana perpendicularly, some may think it's political talk. Do you believe them? Do you believe the allegations? I
believe them. And I spoke to the Honorable Junet when he said that in public, and I did put a call through to him and asked him, and he attested it is indeed true that those who they have reached out to within ODM are telling them. And indeed, I also know for a fact, and you've heard many of us speak of the sponsors of certain political activities in the past. And it's a fact of life that my good friend, former President Uhuru Kenyatta, has spoken to those people. He has been funding some of those characters you see running around. Unfortunately, some of them are more too willing to give information. I remember one time they went to that church in Eastlands, the one presided over by a pastor called Manyuru, and they donated 1.5 million shillings. And as some of these characters are not known to give even 50,000 shillings in church. So I asked one of them there, and he said, haikuwa pesa yetu, ni Uhuru alitupea, and yeye anatusaidia kuzunguka. And it is okay to help, but help in the best interest of the country. Don't help to undermine. In fact, to undermine, in the worst case scenario, your successor. Because William Ruto has succeeded Uhuru Kenyatta. If there's anybody who has helped push the agenda that Uhuru Kenyatta had for this country, is William Ruto. He has done it better than Uhuru Kenyatta did himself. Remember, Uhuru Kenyatta abandoned universal health coverage midstream. Remember, President Uhuru Kenyatta abandoned the housing agenda that was to transform this country, not just in terms of building houses, but also in creating job opportunities for young people and spurring growth of our manufacturing sector. He abandoned in midstream because people made noise at him. Thank God for the resilience and courage of William Ruto. that amidst all the insults and the negativity, he has held still and remained focused on the cause to transform this country. And that's why today I remain very confident that it is possible, indeed, as he tells us, within our lifetime to transform this country from being a middle-level economy to a first-world economy.
Mahesh, how you're speaking right now, especially to the person of Uhuru Kenyatta, is very different from the magnanimity you had in this interview with KTN December last year, exactly 1 year ago. And at that time, we'd seen President Kenyatta with President Ruto, of course, and some very positive talk was coming from your quarters about the former president. Is this to indicate that the friendship that the regime desired with President Uhuru Kenyatta hit a snag?
I was magnanimous, I remain magnanimous. For me, and I've said it before, I have absolutely nothing personal against the person of President Kenyatta. I worked with President Kenyatta for 10 years as my president, elected under his party, as member of parliament in this constituency. He did not do much to help my people as President William Ruto has done to help my people in this constituency in terms of rolling out development projects and also in terms of focus to delivery on things that he promised the people. But that is my personal view and my opinion of the two presidents that we have had in the recent past. And the views I'm giving you are also my views, my own opinion of what I see when I look at President Kenyatta. And even last year when, and even early this year when he asked President Ruto, reach out to all these leaders, let's bring the country together. And the president was very magnanimous also to say, I indeed have reached out to them and I'll continue reaching out to them. And even today, President William Ruto is still very open to reaching out to other leaders, not just President Kenyatta, but even other leaders, even those within the opposition, who see the bigger vision that he has for the country and who have the interest of the country at heart. What I take exception to with my former president is what I said in the beginning, how I pray that he would rise above the day-to-day politics of the country, become our father figure, our reference point even as leaders. Today, for instance, if I had a problem with President William Ruto, I would have gone to my father, my late father, because he would talk to President William Ruto. And they were good friends also. President Ruto invested time in visiting my father every now and then, and he would come and have a chat with him. Probably then I would have gone to my dad and told him, hey, Mzee, let's ask the president to have a sitting with you, have this and that problem with him. Who would I go today? That person should be Uhuru Kenyatta. When push comes to shove, and the politics of the day take a center stage, and there's something that you need to do as a country in the best interest of the people and in the best interest of the country, the person who ought to bring people together should be a former president. That is what happens in other democracies. That is what happens all around the world. I see the likes of Jakaya Kikwete, Benjamin Mkapa, and others before him. In other countries in Africa, we have seen that happening. In countries where former presidents become antagonistic against their successors, we've also seen what happens. We've seen what happens in countries where those who succeed former presidents become vindictive, and I thank God that President William Ruto never became vindictive. The kind of things that were done to President Ruto as deputy president, had he been a vindictive person against President Kenyatta and those who served in his regime, people who even killed people, murdered people, simply because they worked with President William Ruto. I take you back to 2022 because we tend to forget the two young Indians and a taxi driver who were murdered and their bodies dumped to be eaten by hyenas and tigers in their badeas simply because they were working for William Ruto. Had William Ruto been vindictive, some of these characters running around here would not be running around. Had William Ruto sought to become vindictive against his former boss, we would not have a country today. And that is why also I'm informed as a leader that we must always look at what is in the greater interest of the country and forget the personal differences that people have. That's why I say I have nothing personal against anybody, not against the former president, not against anyone who had things to say of worse things than me to say of the former prime minister, the late Raila Odinga. But you saw in 2023, after the demonstrations of 2023, I was among the people who sat with President William Ruto, former President Obasanjo, and the former Prime Minister, two other gentlemen that I don't want to get into their names here because it's not in the public purview, and sat with the former Prime Minister. And therein NADCO was born. And we were able to manage the politics of the day and the temperatures that were there then and get our country to move forward. Because we all act in the best interest
of the country. Sure. Let's take this conversation forward and wind up with President Kenyatta, perhaps with this question for clarity, because Kenyans would want to know. There appears to be, at one point, some friendship formed, the other point, it's gone. You are very key in this government and a very close ally of President William Ruto. How would you rate the acceptance by President Uhuru Kenyatta, or the willingness by President Uhuru Kenyatta to let bygones be bygones with this regime on a scale of 1 to 10? 10 meaning he's very open to letting bygones be bygones. 1 meaning not very.
Oh, on a scale of 1 to 10, I think it keeps oscillating. I don't know, depending on what. Because, for instance, when the president reached out to him, that time you'd have said he was probably at about 6 out of 10. In the last few months, I think it's gone down to about a 4 out of 10. And that's why I say, in my view, he seems unable to let bygones be bygones and allow his predecessor to run the country. And let be that what happened in 2022. You didn't want this person to become president and win. You probably thought he would never be able to deliver in the manner he's being able to deliver. He might be doing better than you, but it happens. Students become better than teachers. It just happens.
A 4 is what you're giving him currently.
I'll give him a 4 out of 10.
Let's be done with President Uhuru Kenyatta. Referendum, a need to amend the constitution, have the 7th ballot in 2027 is a call that is coming from your side. Actually, someone as senior as a prime cabinet secretary. What's your take to amending the constitution right now?
My side is me.
Kenya Kwanza side, you are the majority leader.
You can say the prime cabinet secretary, of course, serves in this administration. He's a very senior leader in this administration. But I think he was very clear the position he gave are his views.
So what's Kimani Ichung'wah's view?
Are not the views of Kenya Kwanza, you have asked my views. So thank former the prime cabinet secretary that he has shared his views and his opinion of what he sees of the country today. And he has said certain things that are true and asked the country to have a debate. The prime cabinet secretary has not said this must be done. He has simply opened a conversation that we ought to have. We need to ask ourselves, do we have a crisis in terms of delimitation of boundaries, since we had a constitutional timeline that was not adhered to because we did not have an IEBC commission in place. We now have a commission in place. Can they do it out of time? They can do. So what do we do? I know that's a matter, for instance, that is before the Supreme Court for an advisory opinion. And I would actually ask the Supreme Court to give an advisory opinion on what needs to happen so that we guide the country, because the risks that the Prime Cabinet Secretary was speaking to are inherent risks. There are contingent liabilities that lie there. it is possible with the kind of activist judiciary at times that we get, that tomorrow somebody will rush to court. Say Kikuyu constituency ought to have been delimited the boundaries and split into two, or Ruiru or Mukurweini ought to have disappeared because of the numbers, or Tetu or any of the other constituencies that had that challenge. And you never know. So he's just sounding the alarm bell. So when someone sounds an alarm bell, you don't go and beat him up. Just listen, ask him what is the problem, and listen to the problem. The question to me as Kimani Ichung'wah, me, I'm very focused on the road to Singapore. I'm very focused on the road to Singapore. And I know President William Ruto's mind is on the road to Singapore. Not building a road to go to Singapore, as Maraga thinks that we are moving people to Singapore. But figuratively, speaking about getting our country to move to a first world nation status and the things that need to be done, more so, and I dwell more on the structural things that we need to do, both economic and governance issues. And Musalia is telling us of governance issues that we need to address. Therefore, as President Ruto speaks of the economic things that we need to do, Musalia on the other corner is telling us there are a few constitutional issues that we need to look into. That is not to say that they must be done. It's a discussion that he has opened. We should just soberly debate and ask ourselves whether it is possible. As Kimani Ichung'wah, where I sit, I think we would polarize the country too much to bring in many issues into the ballot. Two, I think the debate as to whether we can amend our constitution now or tomorrow is also a debate that we ought to have. How to amend is another debate, because there are three major ways through which you can amend a constitution. The popular initiative route you saw from the BBI experiment is a near impossibility. Near impossibility. I don't say it's impossible, but it's a near impossibility if you carefully read the Supreme Court ruling of the BBI matter. Therefore, that is a route that would be rigorous and torturous for us, that I would not advocate for. Parliamentary initiative is another route that could be explored on some of the issues. Yes, it is not everything. It is not everything that you could do, but you could do a parliamentary initiative, and if you have the numbers, the issues that need to go to a referendum, you take them to a referendum. From where I sit, I think it would be better to deal with the constitutional issues separate from the election. So that
should be before, after 27?
If you ask me, I would go for after the elections, so that you don't polarize the country and mix up too many issues. Let the elections be about who Kenyans want to govern them. How they want to be governed, which are the constitutional questions, let it be a question that will be done after the elections, if you ask me. Again, because also I'm just being realistic in terms of timelines. If this debate had started earlier, then we would have done it earlier. But look, another year and a half to elections, it may not be plausible to do a referendum before elections. I would not really be keen to have it as a seventh ballot. Already the Kenyan election is too heavy. 6 ballots on the same day is too heavy, and we can all attest to that. We have a new commission. Allow them time to get the ropes done. They've just successfully done the by-elections. They have seen the things they need to improve on, those that they need to add on to the systems that they have. Therefore, adding a 7th ballot to them, I think, would be a bit heavy for a new commission. But again, let me just say, let us focus on the road to transform this country without belittling the issues that the former, Musalia is a former vice president. That's why the name former keeps coming. The Prime Cabinet Secretary has raised. There are issues that we need to debate. Let's keep talking about them. The issue of delimitation of boundaries is an issue that we need to discuss. Critical for me, the question of NGCDF is a matter also that is critical. from where I sit, because I have seen what NGCDF can do towards the development of our country. I would really look forward to a time when we can soberly ask ourselves as a country, do we need Nairobi to be a county? Do we need 47 counties? Just not to look like I'm being subjective on Nairobi. But I would look, ideally speaking, I would want to look at a scenario where Nairobi was another Washington, D.C., where you don't have a state government, you don't have a county government in charge of Nairobi. And those are issues that I know are not debatable at this time. We need to be at a time where we are not mixed up with many other issues. It would be another point I would add to the Musalia issues, whether we should have Nairobi being removed as a county, for instance. It remains the capital city and probably a minister, like the metropolitan minister that was there during the Kibaki times, appointed by the president and put on his toes, and probably now split the city into smaller cities with mayors or some sort of governance structure. Food for thought, as I'm saying. Remember, it took us almost 30 years to get this constitution, from the 90s to 2010. Actually, we began from 82 after the attempted coup and the change to a one-party state. That's when the clamor quietly began of changing the constitution. But it wasn't until 2010 that we had a new constitution. Right. It doesn't mean that we should take the same number of years, but I'm just saying it's not a process that we can rush into.
Your answer is recorded. I would want us to take a quick break. Then when we come back, we'll ask about a couple of questions, including those who say that there is an intention by Kenya Kwanza and President William Ruto to extend his term. Should he win a second term, then do long term. Let's take that break. Welcome back. You're watching NTV on this exclusive interview with the leader of majority, the National Assembly, Kimani Ichung'wah. My name is Ibrahim Karanja. Mhesh, what is long term?
Long term? The opposite of short term.
Because it's increasingly being used on political podiums by your side. In fact, when President William Ruto made his State of the Nation address, at some point, members of parliament rose, said 2 term, and some said long term. What does that mean?
Don't take everything you hear on political platforms too seriously. I think I first heard it in Bere with CS Roko when he was saying him is long term, meaning he's not going for 1 term, he's not going for 2 term, he's long term, he's cabinet secretary in the long term. That's the first time I heard that term, long term. I've had 4 term here in Kikuyu, I've had others tell Kindiki 4 term. But it's just that. It's just political sloganeering, nothing beyond it.
Is there a plan to extend, alter the constitution, give President William Ruto more than 2 terms? How? Alter the constitution. We're already seeing conversations about amending the constitution by the Prime Cabinet Secretary.
What I've seen from Musalia has nothing to do with terms of office of the president.
Now, how it's being interpreted is that Musalia is using a lot of excuses, a lot of reasons, just to hide the main reason, which is altering the presidential term limit.
I don't think that is true, because Musalia was very particular and he had particular issues that he itemized. And he itemized those issues, the NGCDF, the Senate Oversight Fund, the 2/3 gender rule issue, which is still a question that we have not been able to address and align it, or rather fulfill the requirements of the Constitution. He's spoken about delimitation of constituencies, that is a constitutional matter. He enumerated the issues that he would want to be taken to a referendum. I didn't see anything to do with terms of service of either the president or members of the executive, be it governors or whoever. Therefore, that's just mere speculation and the usual political negativity of people who do not want Kenyans to engage soberly to discuss issues as they have been brought to them. I would plead with Kenyans to just debate the issues soberly. And that's why I said, probably given time, Kenyans to just internalize the issues that have been raised There are some I'm certain with time they will resolve themselves. As I said, the question of delimitation of boundaries, there's a matter that is before the Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court gives the country guidance on it, is a matter that we can go around. The issue of two-thirds gender rule, you never know, maybe after the next elections, the elective bodies being parliament and county assemblies, Kenyans may just elect a fairly representative assembly with both gender representation, and that would resolve that issue. But as I said, they're just issues that we need to discuss soberly without reading too much detail that is not there. President William Ruto, I believe I can speak for him on this one because I know him. He is very focused on getting this country moving. But he knows he's also time bound. He knows that. That is why at times you will see him say, I am a man on a mission to transform this country within the time I've been given by the people of Kenya. And he keeps saying, and he has said it even as he spoke to us last month on the need to have our party elections finalized with, so that we have proper governance structures even within our political parties. I saw him over this festive season telling the ODM team, organize yourselves within ODM, and I'm going to organize my UDA to patane hapo mbele and form government, because he also believes in political parties being the platform to nurture future leaders in this country, leaders who equally be focused on delivering what is good for the country. And I want to believe that we'll be able to do within the political parties that we have. That is why in the beginning I told you I would be hesitant, and I want to ask my brothers in ODM not to allow ODM to be divided by people who have no interest of the party and the fair governance of our country in their hearts, but just want to be vindictive and just play vengeance.
You're telling us not to read too much into the statements about long-term, especially in regards to the presidential term limit. But when something is repeated over and over again, it becomes a concern. As late as this, just before Christmas, during the Kimani Goat auction, which you attended, the new senator for Baringo, spoke about a possibility of extending the president's term. You spoke after him. The president spoke after him. None of you called him out. Before that, other leaders associated with your side, including William Kamket, spoke about Tumetoka County, ama area ya 24. Of course, referring to President Daniel Toroitich arap Moi, may God rest his soul in eternal peace. This is from your side. You, the leaders of that particular side, President William Ruto, yourself, Kimani, Ichung'wah, the deputy president, you don't appear like calling to order this leader saying this. Yet here you are telling Kenyans not to read too much from it.
The saying that when a mosquito bites your testicles, don't hit it with a hammer. You've heard that saying?
Yes, I have.
The new senator for Baringo is a young man who just got elected. And I believe that's his first platform to speak in front of the president. The very first one. Would you honestly want a leader of majority, a president, to be the one to stand in that platform and admonish that young man based on something he's just said because he's had another person say it? And as you rightly say, is William Kamket, who had said it some time back, that as the people of Baringo, we are used to 24 years long term. And you know, it's just things you say in jest and at the heat of the moment to excite the public that you are speaking to. Nothing to carry beyond that. In actual fact, if I spoke to it, I believe that's what you guys in the media would want and say, oh, there was confrontation between the new senator for Baringo and the leader of majority because the senator for Baringo comes from President William Ruto's backyard and has said long term, and the member for Kikuyu has said no. But I have told you, from where I stand and knowing President William Ruto and speaking to him almost on a daily basis, he is not interested in going beyond his 2-term limit. But he is very interested and focused and committed to ensuring that he leaves this country in a better place than he found it, and on a trajectory that he will also nurture leadership that will take this country beyond his 2 terms.
That trajectory has now been christened the road to Singapore.
Yes.
What is this about? The president spoke about it for the first time during the State of the Nation address, cited 4 sectors that needed proper work: energy, infrastructure. He spoke about, if I'm not wrong, I think agriculture. What was the 4th one? Water. The opposition is actually saying this is political messaging. In 2022, we had hustler dynasty, bottom up. Now it's the road to Singapore. Please tell us, what is this about?
Thank you. You have said is opposition that are saying is another narrative. And in fact, I've also heard some of your colleagues in the media call it a new narrative. But it's because they, just like many of us, we hardly take time to internalize party manifestos. We are not accustomed to a system where you go out to the public, sell your manifesto, publish a manifesto, even give hard copies of manifesto, share it online in the recent past. People read, internalize, and judge you based on how well you are implementing that manifesto. I'll take you back to 2022 when we were launching the manifesto. After, I think, President William Ruto then said that hii manifesto sio gazeti ya kusoma na kufunga nyama naye. Without belittling those who publish newspapers like yourselves.
But anyway, proceed.
That's why I remembered and I said I had to correct that. But he said that. Sio gazeti ya kusoma, because we read newspapers and we put them aside. Huu ni mpango wa kazi. Kazi tutakayotekeleza Mwenyezi Mungu akitupea nafasi ya kupata uongozi wa taifa letu. I would challenge anyone today to go back to our manifesto. Check whether, as President Ruto said again 2 years ago, that we shall implement this manifesto page by page, chapter after chapter, paragraph by paragraph, sentence by sentence, comma to full stop. That when we say in the road to Singapore, or in the move, because Singapore, the road to Singapore is figurative language. He's spoken about Malaysia, spoken about the other Asian tigers and where they were at independence and where we were ourselves. And how they did what was right then and got to where they are today. And he's called us to action, to, irrespective of the noise and the politics of the day, to focus on doing what is right for the country. That is why 3 years ago, Ibrahim, with all the noise that was there on the housing levy, and 2 years ago on the move from NHIF, the defunct NHIF, to the Social Health Insurance Fund, he said, gentlemen and ladies, let us focus. Forget the noise. The noise will come down if we remain focused and deliver. We were told this is a slush fund for William Ruto and his friends in the political, his cronies, political cronies. Not a single house will be built. Do you remember that, Ibrahim? It was said. Today, Kenyans can tell us whether Mukuru, whether the Kikuyu affordable housing site, whether the one I see coming up in Lower Kabete for Kabete is there, whether there are housing projects in Thika, and I'm giving examples of the ones around me here in Kikuyu. I've seen a recent video of somebody shoot a video, a TikTok video in the affordable housing units in Homa Bay, Kakamega, Bungoma, everywhere across the country. Whether that is transformation that we can see, feel and touch. Whether that is a transformation we lost an opportunity for when President Kenyatta gave up on the housing agenda because of noise, political noise. Thank God we have a president today, probably made of some other steel, that he says, let us focus. So the noise that you hear from the opposition, I have not heard of alternatives. You say, I had Maraga Kalonzo say we can't go to Singapore. They are just saying we can't go and we can't do it. But they are not giving us an alternative route of going there. How I wish we had an opposition that was giving us an alternative of how we would get there. Have we left the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, or BITA, or bottom-up as we called it?
The jury is out there.
The jury is me and you. And that's why I said, when we published that manifesto, we say this is, in fact, we christened our manifesto, the plan, if you remember. It was Kenya Kwanza Manifesto, the plan. A plan of action, beginning from bottom up, now getting to where we are. We began, remember, from the fight we had 3 years ago on whether do we subsidize production, do we subsidize consumption. This work to bring the cost of food prices down. The jury is you and me today to know whether the price of unga is still at 260 shillings, whether a kg of sugar today is at 450, 480 as it were 3 years ago, whether we're importing as much sugar as we're importing, whether we're importing as much maize as we're importing, and rice and all those other food commodities, and whether what we are saying is possible to be done. That William Ruto today is telling us we need massive investment in water. And I saw Kenyans making fun when saying, oh, Ruto said we don't need rain. We need water. And it is true. You want rain to give you water, to use water for your farm. What if you have water? I have gone to farms in UAE and Israel, in places where it hardly ever rains, but they have water and they are farming. That is what William Ruto is telling us. So as we move now from within the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, because we've not left bottom-up, the bottom-up economic transformation agenda was the plan, our manifesto. It is what we are implementing. The setup of the infrastructure fund, the sovereign wealth fund, are things that are in that manifesto. I was just telling somebody this morning, go to page 10 of our manifesto.
There's actually a national infrastructure bank. That's how you call it.
It was actually titled Infrastructure Bank. An infrastructure fund will be established with initial capitalization from privatization proceeds.
True.
Is that what we are doing? Exactly what we are doing. Implementing this manifesto to that comma, with a view to progressively reducing the financing of commercially viable infrastructure projects from the budget. Isn't that what we are saying we are doing?
I will be coming back to the National Infrastructure Fund and whether actually it is you collecting money so that you're able to borrow more off the books, because that claim has been made. However, you've challenged the opposition to give us an alternative. I challenge you to give us into granular details, not just in ambiguity, road to Singapore. When the president says, imagine I've done this in 2 years, I've done this in 2-3 years, imagine what will happen in 15 years. So get into the mind or brains of Kenyans. Explain to us like a layman. Give me a bird's eye view of a Kenya 15 years from now using that model of road to Singapore.
Thank you. And I'll take you back to housing. It's the best fund that I can use now. And true, the president is telling you that we have done what we have done in Mukuru, for instance, in 2 years. Let me take you back here to Kikuyu constituency, where I represent the people of Kikuyu. The average land holding here, average, is an acre, 1 acre. That used to be, by the way. Today, the average land holding is 1/4 acre to 1/2 acre in this constituency. With rural-urban migration, a lot of people have settled in this constituency who are not originally from here, including many of my neighbors here. If we were to continue subdividing land, and I'm using the prism of Kikuyu and the larger Kiambu to tell you where we were and where we are and where we would go. Kiambu used to produce tea and coffee, Limuru, Githunguri, Ruiru. Go to the coffee farms in Juja, Ruiru today. Kiambu Road. All the bars and commercial properties and apartments you see along Kiambu Road, those are formerly coffee farms, only 15, 20 years ago. So imagine without the housing fund, what that will continue to do to the disintegration of and subdivision of land in Kikuyu, in Kiambu. We have 1,000 units being done at the junction of Kikuyu and Wayakiwe at Gitaru. With that, we are also doing another almost 3,000 units in Muguga Agri-City, where we also intend to do an Agri-City that will have industries that will create job opportunities for the population that we are talking about, and therefore the many young people that we are taking through school. So when I break it in granular form to you, that housing fund 3 years ago we were being told is a slush fund, because that's what we were being told, and it was said nothing would be done. But through that housing fund, I have seen welders who we brought together in an association of welders in Kikuyu town get orders, purchase orders to make windows, doors for those affordable housing units. Their first order was 6 million shillings. Now they told me they just got another one thing for 12 or 11 million shillings. Those are people at the bottom of the pyramid that are going up. They would never have dreamt of ever servicing such an order. I'll tell you, I had to guarantee them myself, because the bank could not speak to them, because they are not bankable people. I used my own resources to guarantee them in the bank to access funds that the bank pays to the suppliers of the steel. They make the windows, they make the doors, they deliver, they get paid, the bank gets their money, they are left with their profit. That is how granular people are growing day by day. But it will not happen overnight, Ibrahim. In fact, I saw someone in jest say, oh, William Ruto told us the road to Singapore will take us 30 years. Now Sijui has told us how many years.
In fact, the timelines is something that the president has been inconsistent on.
The transformation of a country is not something that you place a number on that is static. If we have taken 60 years to be where we are, and we are being told it's because we didn't make the right decisions at the right time. Fact of life. Because Singapore did, Malaysia did, other Asian tigers did. A number of African countries have also made hard decisions. Rwanda, our neighbors here, have made hard decisions. And they have progressed. That is just what we are saying. We make hard decisions, be courageous to confront our problems and deal with them. We will go there. Let us, I find it too petty to begin picking a fight now. Oh, President Ruto said this road to Singapore is a 30-year transformation. That is why now what people are saying, oh, he wants to go long term to the 30 years, because that's the nonsense you hear. But William Ruto has told you, I am here, maybe, just maybe, I am that agent for change that we needed. And just maybe, give him the benefit of doubt. Beyond his 10 years, if you have set in motion proper governance structures, if you have nurtured leadership that will take you forth, William Ruto is not telling you that he will need 30 years. He is saying the country will need 30 years, or probably even 40 or 45, to get to where Singapore is today. Because we are late, Ibrahim, we are very late. That is why we should not even be spending more time now arguing. Sure. We should just get down to work and work. The infrastructure fund, I'm telling you, was in our manifesto. We said how we would do it. Listen to the naysayers out there, and I like those who are saying that a man who says it cannot be done should not get into the way of those who are doing it, or the man who is doing it. So the Maragas, the Kalonzos of this world who have been there for 40 plus years doing nothing, should not get in the way of the man who is doing it, because the man who is there now is doing it. He's transforming this country in a way that has not been seen before.
This infrastructure fund that you're talking about, indeed it is in your manifesto. I've read your manifesto a couple of times, and you indicated that proceeds from privatization will get into the infrastructure fund. However, this appears to be inconsistent with the Constitution. In fact, you'd remember right now that particular infrastructure fund has been stopped by the courts up until January. Was it that hard to see that this is inconsistent with the Constitution that speaks of a consolidated fund where all government revenues will be coming through? And if there is going to be established a fund, then it's going to be through an act of parliament. But this we saw through a presidential communique.
Ibrahim, a matter for debate before the courts. As you rightly say, the matter is before the courts. The lawyers will argue it out in court.
But how could you not see it? You're the majority leader.
It is the position of those who pretend that it is a fund that ought to be taken through other processes. There are those with a different view, and therefore why you want me to side with those who pretend that all monies must go through the consolidated fund.
That is the Constitution.
It is what is written in the Constitution. That is the Constitution. But there is also the counter argument by those who have the basis of what they have done in trying to establish the fund as a fund outside of the consolidated fund. Because there are many funds that are not in many monies, a lot of monies that don't go through the consolidated fund and are in funds that are established through statutes of parliament, some through regulations, and they are there and legal. Therefore, let us leave it to those who will argue it out in court. And in the worst case scenario, Ibrahim, and that has always been my position. Remember when we established the housing fund, we were taken to court. We are accustomed to it. We argue out your case in court. We argue out our case in court. We leave it to those who interpret the law to interpret it for us in the judiciary, because that is what we chose in our Constitution. That we will have a judiciary that will be the arbiter between your position and my position. Your position is not superior to mine, neither is mine superior to yours. Let the arbiter come and tell us if, when they said of the housing fund, there wasn't adequate public participation, what did we do?
You regularized.
So what is the problem?
The problem is...
Why do you want us now to dwell on the issue of fighting about the establishment of the fund, other than focusing, and that's what I'm telling you, I am focused on that road to Singapore.
Let's now talk about
on doing what we ought to be doing. Because we have fought, we have argued, stupidly so, over 60 years, arguing about this, that, this ethnicity, this ethnic group should be the one that is more superior than others. Oh, we are more than others. We should get more than others. Yet we forget Ibrahim. As much as, for instance, the community that come from the Kikuyu community, we are more than others. But doesn't mean we are superior to others. We are all over this country. I can't be boxed into a corner in this region because I know our children are working, some in Karachuonyo, others in Lodwar, others are working in quarries in Mandera. We want a situation or a country where those who can go and mine gold in Loyangalani can go and do so peaceably, without regard to where they come from.
Let me take you to the...
Why don't we focus on those issues?
Yes, and that is what we are getting into, and that is what we are focusing on actually in this debate. Let me take you to why it's important. Because if there was room to establish this fund in the right way from the start, why establish it in the wrong way? That is the concern from this particular question. But secondly, let's get into what is important.
Can I ask you one simple question? I am the leader of majority. We have a good number of focused leaders in the National Assembly and in the Senate who would support a law to establish a fund. Do you think we would be in any fear of bringing legislation to establish any fund? Do you think we would be in any fear? We have established the housing fund. We moved from NHIF to the Social Insurance Health Insurance Fund. And I'm telling you, let us not even waste our time here, even between me and you, arguing over a non-issue. because it is a non-issue. I wish we were speaking about, do we need an infrastructure fund in this country that will help us lift certain projects out of our budget to finance them, leveraging on private capital to be able to move our economy forward. That is a more critical debate, Ibrahim.
The road to Singapore that the president is speaking about, he articulated projects worth 5 trillion shillings. And this is part of the questions that are coming out right now. Recently, there was that report that said we have borrowed 4 trillion shillings in 3 years. And question is, if what we need will cost 5 trillion shillings, can we be sure what has been done with the 4 trillion shillings we've borrowed in 3 years?
Unfortunately, the people I've had asking that question are the people who are budgeting. Unfortunately.
Fortunately, I'm sitting with the majority leader.
Fortunately, I have chaired the Budget and Appropriations Committee. I chaired that committee for slightly less than 2 years, about 18 months, 2017 to about 2020. And within that period, we borrowed money. And the money that was borrowed every year, not money just borrowed, money raised from the Kenyan people in form of taxes, is accounted for every year. The most foolhardy and stupid thing for any leader, what is sort of being called a leader, especially if you're a member of parliament, to ask is, can we be sure where all this money has gone to? You are a member of parliament. You oversight government. You budget in parliament. So if there's anybody to show people where money has gone to, one, it is members of parliament, two is the Auditor General. Because the Auditor General audits the books of accounts of the government every year, submits reports on a timely basis to the National Assembly. And the Assembly considers those reports auditors' reports. Where they find there has been issues, they raise them. Where they are satisfied, they get satisfied through the public accounts, public investments, and other oversight committees of the National Assembly. Therefore, it's foolhardy for any person to ask Kenyans, show us where this money has gone. And we are telling you that in the past, we have overburdened the Kenyan taxpayer with taxes because we want to do so much in terms of projects. We have also overburdened our generation and future generations with excessive borrowing because, again, we want to finance all our projects using the budget. We are now telling you, let us have an infrastructure fund that we will capitalize using money raised from privatization proceeds, then leverage on private capital, grow that fund, be able to do some of the projects out of the budget, those that are commercially viable. Best case example is the expressway, JKIA Westlands, ABC Place Expressway. It's paying for itself. We never needed to invest. Well, we invested less than 10 billion shillings in terms of changing relocation of services to allow the contractor to take position of the site and develop that project. That was commercially viable. If you can do the same with another expressway, another superhighway to Nakuru or to Malaba, open up our economy and grow our economy, be able to create more jobs, create more trade opportunities within our country and with our neighbors, why not? So when I sit where I sit and I see a member of parliament who has been there, done it, ask us, oh, in the last 3 years we have borrowed so many trillions. Show us where what you have done with this money. Yet, you are seated in a position where you are budgeting for the billions and trillions being borrowed. For instance, this year, we have borrowed. Doesn't mean that we have not borrowed. That borrowing, goes to fund your budget. That is what you are being told with the infrastructure fund. Don't dispose of a government asset, take it to budget support, because that is what we have done in the past. We sold KPLC, we sold Kengen, we sold Kenya Airways, we sold Safaricom. Remember, Safaricom, we own what, 35%? So 65% was sold. Where is the money for Safaricom? What can you show for it? That is what we are saying. Let not our children and future generations come and ask us. You had a behemoth of a telco company called Safaricom. You sold 65% of it and we can't see what you did with the money. You, Kimani, Ichung'wah, knew William Ruto. When you were in a position, you sold 20% of it or 15% of it. Show us what you did with it. We want to be held to account.
That accountability, Mhesh.
Your generation, our generation and future generations to be able to see that you disposed of 15% of Safaricom, got 200 billion shillings, sold a part of Kenya Pipeline, got so many billions. That money went into a fund, leverage on that fund to raise more capital. You did a new expressway, you did a new superhighway, you changed the trajectory of our economy from being more of an economy that relies on import of foods to be one that is self-sufficient in terms of food production because we're able to irrigate our farms. That is how we said that we need water, not rain. That when the rains come, let us not waste all this water. It is dammed. We use it to irrigate to produce our own rice, more rice, produce sugar, produce maize, produce food, including fruits that we're importing. Why do we import oranges from Egypt? And you can grow them in Ukambani.
That accountability is what we are asking here. We are past the hour mark. We'll need to take another break.
We are not afraid to be
however, the member of parliament that we are speaking about here is Ndindi Nyoro. He has been share budget, true to it, because he's the one I've heard. He's the one I've heard raise.
The reason I have not mentioned anybody by name is because I have had a number of members of parliament who by nature are negative.
But you've said this one chaired budget and all that. It's important. It's important. However, if 5 trillion can do a project as grand as what the president has shown us through his desire for, the first world, then is it not right to ask what the 4 trillion we've borrowed in 3 years has done? Should we not be seeing then? Because if 5 trillion is as grand as the president is painting it right now, should we not be seeing something close to that?
It is very right, Ibrahim, to ask. And that is why I told you, it's only stupid of me as a member of parliament to ask that question.
Now to answer
now,
to the public. That is what
to the public. Any member of the public or any Kenyan who needs to know what money raised, not from money borrowed, I told you, money you have raised from taxes. Because you have raised probably an average of 2.6 trillion, 2.5, 2.6 trillion every year. So in 3 years, you have raised 8 or so trillion shillings. Why are you not asking what you have done with the 8 trillion shillings? If you want to know, the Auditor General audits books of accounts of the national government. The Auditor General is able to tell you out of the 2.7 trillion you raised, 2.6 you raised last year, and 1 trillion shillings you borrowed last year, with your budget of 3.6 trillion, you spent 1 trillion shillings or 1.2 trillion shillings repaying your debt. That is the first answer. You spent close to another 600-700 billion shillings paying for salaries. And yet, you have CBAs that we are still agitating to be implemented to raise that number. And yet, your county governments are still recruiting liaison officers to heckle in rallies. But we never tell Kenyans that. So let us be honest with Kenyans. The trillions you raise in taxes and you borrow, you spend paying salaries, paying debt, and meager development. We do a 5-kilometer road in Kikuyu, we do a 3-kilometer road in Kabete, we do a 1-kilometer road in Kilimani, and we remain stuck in the traffic jam on Thika Road. We remain stuck in the traffic road on Maimahio Road. That is why we are telling you today, as we chew gum, let us also scale the stairs. As we do what we are able to do within our budget, doesn't mean after this fund there will be no borrowing. I would be lying to Kenyans to tell them that there will be no borrowing. you will still borrow. But you will not borrow to the extent you would have borrowed had you gone out to borrow 200 billion shillings to build the road from Rironi to not Marsabit, Malaba or Mau Summit. You will not borrow probably the expressway.
It's going to rain.
The Thika expressway will cost another maybe 100 billion or I don't know how much. You would have borrowed more. We are telling you, don't go and borrow.
All right.
Use this fund.
All right. We have to take a break because it's about to rain and perhaps change location with your permission. We've got 2 or 3 other issues to just wind up through. But thank you very much for watching NTV. This is not going to rain, sure. Let's take this break. When we come back, we'll conclude this particular discussion with Kimani Ichung'wah. Welcome back. You're watching this this discussion rather exclusive with the majority leader in the National Assembly, Kimani Ichung'wah, and we have been speaking about the financing, especially of the grand dream that we have to First World. Part of the things that the president spoke to and has now been established is the National Infrastructure Fund, and I think there's also the Sovereign Wealth Fund. We are selling Safaricom. There is already a proposal initiation to sell Safaricom at worth 15% GOK shares for 204 billion, which you're saying will go to the infrastructure fund. So, aside from the 204 billion, there's 100 billion estimated likely to come from the sale of Kenya Pipeline, 65%. And when we sell our entire share of the East African Portland Cement, we are supposed to raise about, is it 17.3 billion shillings? So, what is this supposed to be doing? Because the argument is it was not presented in the budget initially. So what is this supposed to be doing?
What was it presented in the budget?
Like these revenues that we'll be getting from...
budget is not a static thing. For instance, I'm sure when we resume Parliament in February, we'll have a supplementary budget. And you cannot budget for what an intention. For instance, many of these things we have had even to amend laws. We just passed the Government-Owned Enterprises Act that has made certain amendments to the Privatization Act and other acts of Parliament, including many statutes that established many of the government-owned enterprises, or parastatals as we used to call them. Remember, some were established, some by statute, some by legal notices, others through regulation, and we've now brought them all under the ambit of the Government-Owned Enterprises Act. And therefore, it made quite a number of changes to various laws. And probably if we have time, we'll go through the bill in the Act now, because it's now an Act of Parliament. There are still laws that will come. For instance, the Sovereign Wealth Fund that you are mentioning will come in with changes in legislation. And as I said, budget is not a static thing. There are things that come in midstream the year. Probably the time you estimated you would take probably longer to actualize something, you actualize it in time, and you can bring in that into the budget midstream in the year through a supplementary budget. There are also things that you put in the budget hoping to do within the year, but you run out of time and you have to push them forward. So it's neither here nor there whether they are there in the budget or not. It's something that you can alter. Just like laws, as you were mentioning earlier. And I am never worried on anything touching on legislation, because Parliament exists and there's a Parliament in place. I would only be worried of any legislative interventions if Parliament wasn't in place to legislate. But for instance, when we established the Social Health Insurance Fund, I remember the last day after we had done all the amendments, somebody came and mentioned to me, we shouldn't have called this fund authority, SHA, Social Health Authority. We should have used services instead of authority. I told him, why didn't you say that earlier? You should have brought an amendment. I thought it was a good thing. But we have SHA today, and it's functioning. Was in there before. When we did the manifesto and we said we shall establish, we shall roll out universal health coverage through such a social health insurance fund, the law was in there. but it needs to be done. So there are things that you say are going to be done, only that Kenyans, we tend to run ahead of time. We start criticizing even and demonizing things even before they take root. Let's be patient. I saw the other day some church leaders even holding a huge press conference talking about a bill touching on religious organization. A bill myself as leader of majority, I have never seen. I have not even heard of it. If I was asking the peers in PCS's office, why is this bill? He told me, is a proposal that was being formulated by some people. But people are out there already agitating and talking about it. But that's the society we live in, and we have to live with it. But when push comes to shove, rest assured, what is within our statutes will be done in line with our statute. What is not in our statute, we will legislate. What is constitutional, we will abide by the Constitution.
How much do you intend to have inside the National Infrastructure Fund after privatizing all the earmarked?
I think the figure that has been mentioned by the CS National Treasury, they mentioned at least a trillion shillings. That is a target. Whether you realize that or more or less is a matter to be seen with time.
There is a concern that that is trying to borrow off the book. Actually, the word which you've actually used here is we're going to use this fund to leverage also private investment and achieve development goals. Is this equal to borrowing more off the books?
You know, my good friend Ibrahim, I am not just a student of economics, I'm an accountant.
I'm a layman. That's what I'm asking.
It is not. Because you are doing off balance sheet. And what you do off balance sheet doesn't constitute part of your debt. Because I'm using the small resources that I have. For instance, let me just give you the example again of the expressway. Use the 7 or so billion, if I remember right, I think we had in the budget a figure of 7.2 or 7.8 billion. Eventually, I don't know because I was thrown out of the committee. I don't know how much was spent to relocate services for the construction of the expressway. You put in public funds to deal with that aspect of relocation of services. You had to relocate data lines, fiber. You had to relocate sewer lines. You had to relocate water pipes and power lines along the corridor to go to JKI. Then the private corporation came in with their capital to build the expressway, which they are charging.
Yeah.
That expressway is not in our books anywhere as borrowing. Sure. Because we have not borrowed from the contractor who has built it or the corporation that built it. We have done a concession to them. In the 30 or so years, I don't know how many years that expressway is for, I think 30 or 33 years, that asset reverts back to the public. The contractor has recovered their money and made their profit. That is the same model you want to mimic. So how does that now constitute more borrowing? The person or persons who propagate that negativity is that class of those people who think or imagine that if they are not the one doing it, it should not be done and it cannot be done. And they want to get into the way of the person doing it.
Allow me to ask.
And listen to some of them. In the past, they have propagated the same ideas, but they propagated because they thought they were the ones going to do it. But now that you are not in a position to do it, you go out and demonize it. And you're not also giving us alternatives. How I wish and pray that especially those of us who are younger, we could resist the temptation of falling into the trap of the negativity and bile that I see with the older generation of political leaders who it's all about me, myself, and I, and act in the best interest of the country.
Allow me to ask this, and perhaps make the answer briefly, or very brief. How fair is it for the people of the western part of the country to pay to use this road? Because is there an alternative for those who are not paying, the toll, Rironi, Mau Summit, and eventually to Malaba? Yet, for the expressway, we have Uhuru Highway, for those who do not want to use it. those who are using that road, which I use to go to Njoro, will this not be some sort of double taxation?
Based again on the saying I told you that I've seen people throwing around for our good friends, that the man who says it cannot be done should never get in the way of the man who is doing it. I thought you were speaking for those who are saying it cannot be done, because I have seen another one saying, oh, it is not fair for people to be asked to pay for a road, and others are not paying, the people of Mount Kenya are not paying.
True, to drive all the way to...
Useless politicking again.
How fair is it?
It is very fair that if you build a toll road, you provide an alternative, because there is that person who would opt to take the whole day to travel and they don't mind. And they must have an alternative. Rironi Summit, for instance, I also saw somebody else, some former PS, who was a terrible thief, say that the Mau Summit Rironi Road, sijui the cost has tripled or doubled, and he doesn't go into the details of telling the public the scope of works under the old contract and this new contract, because this new contract has incorporated into it the diversion from Kamandora down to Ngenia all the way to Maimahio, going to Naivasha, the lower road, the old road actually, the old highway. Then this newer highway, the one now that goes through Limuru, Kijabe, all the way to Naivasha. It covers that. So that the lower one also remains an alternative. Beyond that, from Naivasha, there is a new road that is taking people from Naivasha all the way to Nakuru through Gilgil, going through. And the president went to commission it. It's just that I'm not very good with the names, but it goes through Dapipi, on the foot of Maunarok, exits through some place where the Gilgil Tivet is, all the way to Nakuru as an alternative. From Nairobi, and the president spoke to it, it's just that politicians will never give you these details when they are selling negativity. The president, during the State of the Nation address, named many other roads that were being dual. And there's a road he mentioned, Kikuyu to Naivasha Road. There is the road we are doing now from Shell in Lusegeti here to join the Gong Suswa Road, again as an alternative route. And this network of roads that are being done is to supplement anyone who does not want to use that main road and pay. So the alternatives are there. Right. Just like when you do the expressway on Thika Road, there will be another road for you to use for free. And
let's wind up. Let's wind up and now get into politics. 2027 is fast approaching. Yes, 2027 is fast approaching. We've seen a lot of politics right now. Broad-based is really established. And this is creating, from political observers, this places the Mount Kenya region, especially those supporting President William Ruto, at a place where you risk losing a lot from this particular government. The reason I'm saying this, there is a fear that you may not be able to deliver the region as was delivered in 2022 to President William Ruto, and other regions will deliver, thus key positions will go. One of the positions that are being discussed about is the deputy president position. As a leader in Mount Kenya, are you scared? As a leader in Mount Kenya, are you scared?
Why would I be scared if I didn't get scared in 2022? Remember 2022, we had a bigger push in the Mount Kenya region with a sitting president who wanted his own succession line. And he had all the means, all the resources, but we never got scared. We pushed our fort and we pushed our agenda with the people, and the people bought that agenda and they voted overwhelmingly for William Ruto. I believe, solidly and convincingly so, that 2027 will be better in the Mount Kenya region for William Ruto than 2022.
Really?
Yes, it will be better than 2022. I tell you that without flinching an eyelid, Ibrahim, because I know the people of Mount Kenya. There was an attempt to poison them with negativity and the politics of hatred. And I think from the Bere North by-elections you've seen, we have been vindicated that the ethnic politics, the politics of hatred and negativity, as much as it had been used to poison our people, the people are coming to the realization that things are not as they are being said. That we were told, oh, your roads will never be done. Even this large fund of a housing levy fund will never build anything in Mount Kenya region. The people can see. They are not blind. They listen to people hurl insults of Kasongo one term must go, Kasongo this, Kasongo that. No substantive agenda for the people. That is what the people of Mbeere North observed and voted for Wamudhende and UDA. Trust me, and I've been in this space long enough, longer than those who are propagating those things. They found me in this space. We tutored some of them, even on what to say, even on what to debate. We know them. They just hollow, they talk great, talk big things, but they are very hollow inside. Trust me, the people of this region will make the right decision when the time comes, just like the people of Mbeere North did, the people of Malava did, the people of Banisa did, the people of Magarini did, and the rest of the country. Right. Two, we are not worried. We are not worried. We have our stake in this government as the people of this region. A stake hard won and hard fought for. We will fight hard to keep our stake. We will fight hard.
You've had the debate of angling for deputy president.
Anybody is at liberty to angle even for the presidency. Even those non-starters who are angling for president. There is one who I saw even locomotion, just the locomotion of your body alone is a problem, but you're angling and saying that you want to run for president, yet you can't even move your own body.
That's body shaming. Well,
I'm not body shaming anyone. I'm just saying, you know, you must first show me that you can take care of yourself before you ask me to take care of you, or you tell me that you can take care of me. The debate that is there is a very good and healthy debate, because we have our colleagues and our friends in ODM who lost their party leader, unfortunately, who had begun working for us in the interest of the country in the broad-based government, and we have invited them to work with us, and they have said they are working with us until 2027 as they organize their house to lay a stake to what is in government. And that is the nature of politics. You come with your numbers, you come with your people, and lay a stake. Right. If you don't lay a stake, who will give you? So ODM must lay their stake and come with their numbers.
Do you feel pressured by ODM?
No. We are on top of our game. Relax. Right, we will deliver our numbers. We pray that ODM will come to work with us. They deliver their numbers. Remember, they are coming from outside. We are already in government.
All right. Leader, you have to promise me that you'll give me an interview at the beginning of the year for politics, because we have not exhausted politics. I'm sure our viewers were expecting this, but we have to wind this interview due to circumstances that you cannot control, including the rains that are just falling right now. But that has been that discussion with the majority leader in the National Assembly, perhaps to wish Kenyans a Happy New Year.
Yes, allow me to take this opportunity through NTV to wish all the people of Kenya a prosperous 2026, happy festive season, a blessed new year, and we look forward to working together and to moving our country to the first world together.
Kimani Ichung'wah there, the leader of majority in the National Assembly, also member of Parliament, Kikuyu constituency. My name is Ibrahim Karanja. On behalf of the team that has carried this out, Dennis Gikera, Fidel Nthiga, of course, with James Wambua, do enjoy the rest of your viewing.